Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. For now, let's talk about the specific person that avoidants commit to. This is the person they tend to marry. And I know this because a lot of times avoidants get very attached to these people. Some of you guys actually know I used to be avoidant if you've seen my videos on YouTube. But another reason is because a lot of couples that come into therapy, what actually happens is the anxious individual is checking out of the marriage because they've been unhappy for so long because both of them have very different perspectives of marriage. And the anxious person feels like they're unloved and they have the right. And then the avoidant person is very happy because the anxious person has almost been doing pretty much everything the avoidant wants. And now the avoidant is blindsided, coming into therapy and then trying to figure this out. And the anxious person is saying, if this doesn't happen, I'm not sure what I can do. I've been trying for so many years. And so the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people think avoidants never get married. They certainly do. And it's an unfortunate situation where sometimes one person is getting more needs than the other, which I don't recommend. Normally, how to resolve these situations is actually to meet on the same page. It takes a while, right? But based on what I've seen, there are definitely specific people that avoidants marry or commit to because they all have very similar personalities. It's hard for me to not see a pattern if I'm doing this every work day, right? And so this is a pattern I'd like to talk about. Normally, the first one is the most common one that I've ever brought up in all of my content. It is the person, if you've been with the avoidant for a certain amount of time, like a couple of years, depending, and it feels pretty calm and relaxed, even though you might feel unloved, and that's not fair for you. I'm just trying to say it from the avoidance perspective. You are the person that they are going to marry or will marry or commit to their highest version of commitment, because avoidants don't let people in. And often if they're struggling with that trigger, they often break up or they leave. If they don't break up or leave very often or at all, because a lot of them don't, they may stay at an arm's length, but they don't fully ever leave. A lot of times you are the person they are most committed to because they've opened up to you and they care about you a lot, because a lot of them don't really tolerate many people at all. The next one is that over time, the relationship feels pretty unproblematic, somewhat peaceful. Avoidance will call it peaceful. I'm not saying for you to suppress your feelings, though. What I am saying is typically this person you might even feel like you'd rather not fight. We see a lot of times in couples therapy, a dismissive avoidant and a fearful avoidant couple, right? And so often both of them don't like conflict. So this works for both of them. The next one is they might say something like this. This is an example. I'm not giving any particular case, but they will say something like, she would do anything for me and I would do anything for her. He would do anything for me. I would do anything for him. It's like they almost feel like, what was that word a long time ago? It was called ride or die situation. Like that's what they kind of feel this relationship is. It's a deep trust. And normally if you hear something like that, it's likely a sign. The next one is that they feel like you guys have productive discussions. Productive discussions typically mean that they are more concise. They have some sort of end goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that they feel like there's a conclusion. They just feel like it was productive. Typically what productive means for an avoidant, and you guys know if you have watched my content for a while, you know that I used to be avoidant. What I used to perceive as productive without realizing it, I thought it meant that you guys have some sort of understanding, a logical understanding. But what I notice now that I've healed is productive discussions typically mean it's not overly emotional, right? That they can handle it. Because a lot of times productive is their perception. If the conversation is too emotional, they have a hard time understanding those emotions or get flustered very easily. I still have this problem sometimes where if there's a lot of emotions in the room, I cannot pick up all the things that's happening. And so what happens is they don't feel like it's productive because they got kind of caught in their own triggers. And so for them, the productive discussion is usually if it's more concise and there's not too high emotions and they feel like it's less friction over time. So the way to know that a conversation is productive is normally that it is concise. That's usually what they perceive. And you want to increase this eventually where it is going to be a little bit less precise as time goes on. But example can be like around 10 minutes typically. It could even be 15, but it's normally when the conversations are not necessarily too emotional, but I also want to give a template of what they may look like. And so typically it's going to be a short exchange, almost back and forth. So let's say, for example, person A and person B are in a relationship, okay? And so with person A, perhaps they said, it bothers me that you sometimes answer my text message after 24 hours. And person B person B, let's say the person B is an avoidant, they might get a little defensive. It's not like I'm doing it on purpose. I'm not trying to ignore you. And then person A can respond and say, I hear that. That makes sense to me. I'm not necessarily saying you're doing it on purpose or that it's something I necessarily want it to change. I'm trying to figure out, is there something that I can do? I'm trying to think that maybe I should be a little less sensitive about your length of you answering, but I'm also wondering if it's possible that you could also keep in mind that it's something that bothers me. They might say, okay, I'm working on it, or they might say, I'm not ready. And at that point, when you feel that their emotion is not budging, you recognize, okay, this is not something I can continue to go through, even if it's like a couple minutes. Why I'm mentioning this is because once it gets to the point where the avoidant is feeling very rigid and they're feeling almost pressured about something like that, that is actually where the conversation does not become productive for them because the emotion starts showing up. And so no matter what the timeline is, but usually it's going to be around 10 minutes, like typically if it gets too high of the emotion, what happens is they can't hear what you're saying. So they might actually say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't care about this, when that's not actually how they feel. But because they're so triggered, they started saying things that they don't necessarily mean. You get the wrong idea. And then the conversation was not productive. And so productive conversations typically mean that once the emotion gets too high for them, not really for you, but you as well, that's when they start feeling like the relationship might be in a not so good position for this moment. And normally, if you step away and reintroduce it later, it can be helpful. But over time, they will increase more tolerance. So I'm not saying to avoid these conversations. I'm just saying put it on a small limit for now until their tolerance increases. The next one is independence, but I want to specify with male avoidance, they do like someone who is a little more financially independent, not all the time, but typically because males in general, as we know, they can be taken advantage of financially in the court, etc. And they don't want that. And that's their right. And so a lot of male avoidants, they would prefer someone a little bit financially independent so that they know you're not trying to take advantage of him. Fair enough. Female avoidants, because of the way the system works, female avoidants are not as worried about that. However, they do care about emotional independence, where they don't want you to lean on them heavily. At least they want you to manage your own emotions. It's okay if she, a lot of female avoidants eventually when they open up, they do want to be there for you, but they just want to know if they can't be there for you or she's not doing the best job at comforting you, that you can still do it yourself. And I feel like that makes sense. It's reasonable, especially for an avoidant. The next one is for fearful avoidants. A lot of them like if they have more deep or in-depth conversations. This can be some fearful avoidants, which I've had a lot of calls with you guys. They will be like very invested and share their childhood in the first couple dates, and then they shut down. Very typical of fearful avoidance. And you will say, does that mean I was too much? Did she or he say too much? No, they love that. The part that scares them is how much they're happy that you heard them. But they normally come back and they get more open eventually. So fearful avoidance, you will see that kind of a shutdown after this, but it doesn't mean they don't like it. Over time, they will get more comfortable. And so I hope this makes sense. My website or information is going to be in the comments, as it typically is. And if you ever need me, that's where to find me. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.